Hello, one and all. This is my view of Dr. Stone, Chapter 180, Sickening Yet Beautiful. And before I begin, I just really need to take a moment to say Happy freaking New Year. Congratulations to everyone watching this video for managing to make it through 2020. I mean, that was the year straight out of hell. I mean, seriously, compare this picture of me from the beginning of 2020 to the end of 2020. Yeah, that was quite a year for all of us, but we made it through, so let's talk about this chapter. Now, I have always said that Dr. Stone is a series where if you really follow the clues, where if you really pay attention, you can predict almost any twist. You can see everything coming from a mile away. I did not see this coming. I did not see a step pyramid made out of millions upon millions of petrification devices. I didn't see that coming. I just really did not see this coming. Honestly, when Suka just randomly found the petrification beam at her feet, I did a double take. I could not believe it. And then they all kind of looked up and they saw this. They saw this monstrosity, this sickening yet beautifully constructed pyramid. It's basically a pyramid made out of voice-activated nukes. Yeah, I did not see that coming, and I'm still just trying to wrap my mind around how and why and what this is. And ultimately, I've come down to 3 possible conclusions. First off, these aren't actually petrification beams, rather they're tributes made by some tribe in the Amazon, some civilization that managed to survive or wake up, and it's their way of worshipping their god, the white man on the moon, all that. I mean, the one that Suka picked up off the ground did seem a little bit more crude and worn out than the ones we've seen in the past. I mean, I guess that could just be because, it's been here for a while, exposed to the elements, but, I mean, maybe? That does seem unlikely, though, just because they're all sparkling so much. They need to be made of, essentially some sort of metal or glass to sparkle like that in the sunset, which a tribe, any civilization, having that much metal, glass, whatever, to craft this number of things would just be absolutely freaking insane. So that doesn't seem all that likely. Secondly, there is a possibility that this was always here, this huge tower of petrification beams. It has been here ever since the original, ever since 3,000 years ago when this all started. But the problem with that theory is this is, a perfectly stepped pyramid. There's no way this would last 3,000 years. There's no way it'd last a year without, falling apart, breaking down, getting washed away in the currents or whatever. I mean, the trees around it do seem to be petrified, which is interesting. So maybe that's like some sort of cage holding it in, but even then that seems very unlikely that it would stay that perfect for that long. And secondly, there's a problem that these GPS coordinates that Senku found that led them to the source of all this were, dead smack in the middle of a town. I think they even named it at the start of this chapter, Maui's, whatever. So yeah, I think people would have noticed this giant tower of petrification beams, from way back then. I mean, maybe if it had been, in a warehouse or something, the warehouse decayed, but doesn't seem all that likely. So that just leaves the third possibility. These are being made continually by basically a 3D printer. I mean, Joel said 2 chapters ago, these parts are so minuscule and precise, they would need to be made by a 3D printer. So maybe there's a 3D printer under all this that keeps just spitting them out. That doesn't really explain how it keeps its shape, but that is possible. Though there is also the probability that the 3D printer isn't actually here on the ground, but rather up in space, on the Moon Man's base, somewhere up there, and every time he ends up making one, he just shoots it back down to the Earth. Some sort of program he made, or some sort of AI, maybe the White Man himself is AI, we've all thought that for quite a while now, that just keeps, releasing these things, that just keeps creating them to fill some sort of purpose, some sort of goal or reasoning, or maybe it's just broken, that's why it's doing this. The only problem with that, though, is I really can't imagine any 3D printer on the land or on the moon that could, keep this perfect shape going for all these thousands of years while exposed to the weather and the elements. That's really why the whole, native population doing this theory makes a lot more sense, but even then, that seems very, very unlikely. This entire thing is just so bizarre and so weird and just so unexpected. I mean, seriously. They spent an entire arc just finding one petrification beam. They've circled the globe hoping to find just one beam, one thing that they can use to, turn the tides of war, make the difference, and instead they find millions upon millions of them. So yeah, definitely unexpected, and I'm definitely thinking they should, bound and gag Zeno at this point. I mean, he looks as surprised and stunned as any of them, but I feel like he could just, shout out, 100 meters, 5 seconds, And then they'd all get petrified, and then he'd have to, wait a few weeks, days for Stanley and the rest of them to show back up and carry him back to Corn City, where they can wake him up. Speaking of Stanley, we get another shot of him at the start of this chapter. Now, we saw a lot of complaining after last chapter that Senku and the gang were a little bit too arrogant, a little too overconfident. The fact they managed to, beat Stanley and the gang to the trees, therefore they were safe. They're like, oh, there's absolutely nothing Stanley can do to hurt us now. Like, yeah, Stanley's a very dangerous person. He should not be underestimated. But even Stanley in this chapter acknowledges there's nothing he can do while they're in the canopy, while they're in the trees. He can't follow their trail or chase after them right now. But Stanley is always a step ahead as he's playing 5D chess here. Basically, the reason they attacked them with such force and vigor, when they first showed up, when they first landed the beach, was not because, they were underestimating Senku and the gang, but because they knew if they attacked with their full force, Senku and the gang would make a mad dash straight to wherever it is they were going, without, setting up any false trails or anything like that. So yeah, even the attack that Stanley lost, he still managed to win somehow. God dang, this man is terrifying. It is definitely interesting, though, that Stanley needed to do that. Like, he needed the information of their escape route, the path they were going in, the direction they were heading in order to chase after them when Zeno sent him a Morse code message. We all assumed up to this point that Zeno sent basically the coordinates to him, but maybe it was something else. Maybe like, don't kill them, or we need them alive, or something like that. I mean, that seems unlikely. Zeno's not that soft-hearted, but everyone in Senku's gang right here is basically the best of something, so they're definitely, more useful alive than dead, and there's only so much they can do if, Stanley and Zeno manage to reunite together, so just curious about that. Oh, then there's also the fact that, if Stanley chases after them, he'll manage to find, the Medusa Tower in all of 2 seconds. Seriously, I'm amazed I didn't see that from the top of the Andes Mountains. That thing is freaking huge, and it is the biggest thing for miles and miles around. Anyway, the rest of the chapter is Senku and the rest of them making their way through the Amazon rainforest. I definitely think there's more they could have done here, more they could have shown of the whole, they're basically crossing a continent here. But I do like what we got here, they basically explain that the insects inside the rainforest are so overwhelmingly deadly, they'll kill you in all of 2 seconds. So they came up with rubber boots, and yeah, I mean, Kohaku, good for you for wearing the rubber boots. They look amazing on you to, keep the bugs from biting at you, but your legs are completely exposed. I mean, yes, your feet are safe, so you don't have to worry about stepping anything crawling up from the ground, but anything with wings can still come and bite your completely exposed leg. Maybe cover up a little bit. Fan service should not cost you your life. Though Suka does look absolutely freaking adorable in her boots. And then we have Suksa taking on a giant python. I don't think pythons this big actually exist, like this thick. I know pythons that long to exist, but that thick, that seems a little bit too monster movie-ish, but it has been 3,000 years, so maybe they managed to evolve to get slightly bigger over time. I could definitely see that being the case. And it is definitely interesting that Tsukasa only seems to use his right arm in this whole chapter. I don't actually think I see him use his left arm or even move it at all, so maybe he's actually injured. Maybe that, where Stanley shot him, there is actually a wound there. It just hasn't been addressed, but it's been hinted at up to this point. I'm very curious about that. And speaking of Suksa, I do freaking love it when Senku asks what the strongest thing in the rainforest is. Taiju points immediately to Suksa, who is eating a giant snake, and Kaku's like, yeah, that sounds about right. And Suksa's like, nah, I don't even stand a chance against the king of the Amazon, the mightiest creature, the army ant. Bugs so deadly they can strip even giant beasts to nothing but bones. And then we see Senku and Chelsea get very, very excited about that. I'm not saying that's proof that Chelsea is working with the Y-Man, she's secretly evil, but it's definitely a little bit unnerving as they capture the army ant and then mash them down into a pheromone that manages to keep away all sorts of other nasty bugs and creatures. And I do just love how everyone is so concerned they'd have to drink that, because that seems exactly the kind of thing Senku would tell them to drink. But Luna just so freaked out she immediately passes out and dies. Poor Luna, you served your purpose, time to move on. And just makes an interesting comment how she learned that from the locals way back when. So yeah, she's a lot of fieldwork experience. I mean, even if Chelsea doesn't turn out to be a villain, I would definitely love to just get some flashbacks, some more stories about her past. I'm very curious about that. Anyway, then they build some rafts and head down the Amazon River, and I'm not sure about this, but it definitely seems like they didn't bring all the bikes with them. I mean, unless I'm not seeing another raft or unless I'm miscounting here, it definitely seems like they only brought some of the bikes with them. Maybe they couldn't fit them all on the rafts, or I don't know. I'm very curious about that. I mean, what real purpose would the bikes have at this point? There's not a whole lot they can do through the dense rainforest, so I don't know. I'm just very curious about that. Anyway, then Chrome gets a pretty good idea. Basically, they should build a device that creates a constant drip of revival fluid so that even if they do get turned to stone, they can instantly wake themselves back up after a few seconds. Which makes Senku wonder if maybe the Y-Man expected that, if he knew that would happen, if he knew somebody would come up with the idea eventually, and he set up contingencies. What if the original petrification, the first event that started all this, wasn't a single attack, wasn't a single petrification beam, but rather multiple beams all going off either at the same time or, every 5 seconds to make sure that everyone was truly and completely petrified. And then some time passes. I was actually very shocked where it says right here, it's taken 4 months. Wait, they've been in the Amazon for 4 months? And then I kept reading, since leaving Japan. Oh yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. They definitely skipped over a lot of what happened in the Amazon, which a little disappointing. I would definitely love to see more of that. It does feel like some of the more interesting stuff has been skipped over the last 2 chapters. They could have done an entire arc of them just, getting from one end of the Amazon to the other, but I guess not. Oh, we do get a date though. It is now January 80, 57, 42. I really feel like they should just, make a new calendar, start a new thing, We had BC, AD, how about AP, after petrification? Or, SA, Senku's awakening, The new calendar starts the year Senku woke up, or something like that. We also see Joel very, very deep in thought as he's observing the petrification beam, so I'm assuming next chapter, one after that, he's gonna have some big revelation about how it works, what's to be done with it, or just, something that explains anything about it that's gonna be helpful for Senku and the gang, now that they've found a freaking mountain of the stuff. So, yeah, anyway, they finally get to ground zero. They finally get to the source of it all, and like I said, there are millions of these things just stacked straight up to the freaking sky, and I have no clue how these came about. I'm still gonna say 3D printer seems the most likely, but I don't think that would explain, the perfectly neat step pyramid look it has to it, so I don't know. Also, the trees around it look like they're petrified. There's definitely wood underneath, but it looks like the leaves of it have been, literally turned to stone, so I don't know, I'm just very curious about that, very weirded out. I don't exactly know what to make of any of this, and I really, really cannot wait for the next chapter to fill in some of these blanks. Unfortunately, there'll be quite a long wait as it's off next week, and we won't get another chapter till January 17th, which, very, very disappointing. As for my predictions, like I said, maybe there's a tribe here who's stacking it up. Zeno or Hyogo could end up betraying them here, grabbing petrification beam, just petrifying all of them, knowing that Stanley's going to find his way to them at some point, and then he can just bring Zeno back and revive him in Corn City. I mean, do these things still work? How long have they been here? Like I said, the one Suka picked up did seem a little, worn out and damaged, so maybe not all these work. Maybe some of these, have been so weathered with time that they've completely broken down, so I don't know. Honestly, I just really want to see someone scream into the mountain, 1 meter, 10 seconds, and just see the, ball of light that is created when that actually happens. When all the devices activate at once, that'd be absolutely freaking amazing to say. But yeah, let me know what your predictions are. What's gonna happen next? What do they do with this freaking mountain? They just, grab as many as they can and start making their way out? I mean, we all kind of expected this would take longer. This would be like an entire arc into itself. By the time they finished up here, Stanley, the rest of them would show up with Perseus, and they'd be able to, reunite and form a new team and put aside the differences, take on the bigger threats. So are we going to see the bigger threat next chapter, or is this, where Senku and the gang are like, all right, I guess we're going to start heading back to Corn City or start building another boat or doing something? I really just don't know. This went so far beyond my expectations. I'm still just in shock right now. But hey, they found the City of Gold. That's something at least. But please, let me know all down below. I'm sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Next video is going to be the My Hero Academia video, which will be up a few minutes to an hour or so after this one. And then after that, I'm going to do a video on the 1000th chapter of One Piece. Someone requests that, I will definitely do that. It's probably be up sometime either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm still unclear on that. But until then, just congratulations to everyone watching it for making it through 2020. And I wish all of you a much, much more peaceful 2021. So as I always say at the end of my videos,
peace!